What if I told you that a warning sign on a beach, a breaking news report about some bizarre local phenomenon, and I don't know, that deeply angry rant your uncle posted online this morning all share one hidden structural trait?
Which is something you're probably swimming in every single day.
Exactly. You check your phone and instantly you are just completely drowning in the information age. I mean, everyone is shouting a point of view at you.
Oh, yeah. Constantly.
But here is the secret. Despite all that noise, none of those examples are actually making a logical argument. You are absolutely flooded with information, but you are starved for actual reasoning.
It really is the defining problem of our modern era. We have this unprecedented, unlimited access to data, but, access does not magically equal understanding. If you
Right.
don't have a reliable filtering mechanism, like if you don't understand the underlying machinery of how a thought is actually constructed, then everything just looks like noise.
You just end up reacting to the emotion of it.
Exactly. You react to the emotion of a statement rather than evaluating its structural integrity.
And that is exactly the mission of today's deep dive. We are going to give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Because we're not going to spend a single second telling you what to think.
No, not at all. Instead, we're looking at the actual architecture of how to think. We're pulling our foundational knowledge today from Stan Baronet's widely respected work, Logic.
It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. We're going to break down the fundamental mechanics of human reasoning.
And right out of the gate, I think we should clarify something about that word, logic.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because it can sound incredibly academic, like something reserved for, philosophers debating in an ivy-covered tower.
Yeah.
But that couldn't be further from the truth.
It's not just for academics.
Not at all. Logic is a highly practical, gritty, everyday tool. It is the exact same cognitive process used by a car mechanic who is listening to an engine knock to diagnose a faulty valve.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, or it's used by triage nurses evaluating overlapping patient symptoms. And it is the essential survival gear for you, sitting there right now trying to make sense of a political debate or a sales pitch.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to understand the grand sweeping arguments that we are bombarded with every day, we can't start at the roof. We have to start with the raw materials.
The bricks.
The bricks, exactly. In the study of logic, the absolute most basic, irreducible unit of reasoning is something called a statement.
Precisely. Now, logicians use that term to refer to a very specific kind of sentence. A statement is declarative sentence.
Meaning it declares something.
Right. It asserts or claims that something is the case.
Yeah.
And a single defining characteristic of a statement is that it possesses what we call a truth value.
A truth value.
Yeah, meaning it's either absolutely true or it is absolutely false.
So it's like the brain's binary sorting mechanism, a 1 or a 0. But here's the part that I found really counterintuitive at first. We don't actually need to know which one it is true or false to recognize that a statement has a truth value.
Right.
Like, for example, the text uses this great one. There is a diamond ring buried 50 feet under my house.
That is a brilliant example because it isolates the mechanism perfectly. It is a declarative sentence. Therefore, the universe already knows its truth value.
Right, it's a fact or it's not.
Yes, it is either an absolute fact that there is a diamond ring down there, or it is an absolute fiction. The fact that you may never, ever dig a 50-foot hole in your basement to find out is completely irrelevant to the logic of the sentence.
Because our ignorance doesn't change with the sentences.
Exactly. Our human ignorance doesn't rob the sentence of its fundamental nature. It inherently possesses a truth value, whether we know it or not.
I love that. We are just categorizing the type of sentence it is. Now, let me try an analogy here to push this distinction just a little further.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think of a statement like water in a glass. If I take that exact same water and I pour it into a ceramic coffee mug or a plastic bowl or, I don't know, a tall vase, does the shape of the container change the chemical makeup of the water itself?
No, obviously not. It's still H2O.
Right. And we see this play out brilliantly with human language. Take the statement, water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit.
A highly verifiable declarative statement. It has a clear truth value.
Right. But what if I translate that exact same statement into Spanish? El agua se congela a 32 grados Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And then I write it in German. Wasser gefriert bei 32 grados Fahrenheit. Then Hindi, then Swahili. visually, if you look at them on a page, these are entirely different sets of symbols.
Yeah, completely different shapes.
They look different, the syntax is different, they sound completely different to the ear, but the core, meaning the water in the glass, remains completely undisturbed.
Which is a very elegant way to illustrate the difference between a statement and a proposition.
A proposition.
Right. In logic, the statement is the specific sentence you construct in a specific language. The container, to use your analogy.
Right.
But the proposition is the actual information content. It is the underlying meaning being imparted, completely independent of the language used to express it.
So the translation doesn't matter.
Exactly. All of those different translations are distinct statements, but they are all expressing the exact same proposition.
It is the soul of the sentence. But that naturally makes me wonder about sentences that don't have that kind of soul. What falls outside of this?
Well, a lot, actually.
Because surely not everything that comes out of our mouths is a binary true or false.
Far from it. Much of our daily communication completely lacks a truth value. If I look at you and ask, what time is it? That is a question.
That you're not declaring anything.
Exactly. It is seeking information, not claiming a fact. Or if I tell you, clean your room right now, that is a command.
You can't say a command is false.
Right. You can obey it or ignore it. But the command itself cannot be true or false. Furthermore, things like poetry intentionally operate outside the strict realm of logical statements.
How so?
Well, when Robert Burns writes, "My love is like a red, red rose," we're not supposed to interrogate that sentence as a biological claim.
Right, right.
It is meant to evoke feeling, not to establish a factual premise.
Unless you were exclusively dating Flora, which is a totally different deep dive.
True.
So we understand the raw material now. Statements are declarative sentences with a truth value. But a pile of raw material doesn't do anything on its own. How do we assemble these propositions into an actual argument?
To build an argument, you have to establish a very specific mechanical structure. Think of an argument like a physical gear system.
Okay, gears.
It is a group of statements where one statement, which we call the conclusion, is claimed to be physically forced into motion by the others.
And the other statements are what?
Those supporting statements, the gears doing the turning, are called the premises. Premises provide the structural evidence, the explicit reasons for accepting the conclusion as true.
Let's put this gear system into practice with a fascinating real-world anchor from the source text. Think back to 2005. California passed a very specific law banning the sale of violent video games to minors.
Oh yeah, the Schwarzenegger-era law.
Exactly. We're talking about games where the player's options included killing or maiming an image of a human being, specifically if the game lacked serious literary or artistic value.
Right, and it was a highly controversial piece of legislation. It was immediately challenged by the video game industry on grounds that it was unconstitutional.
Right.
That legal battle went all the way to the Supreme Court, which ultimately voted 7-2 to strike down the California law. And if we look at the excerpt of the court's decision, it is an absolute masterclass in formal argument structure.
And just a quick note to you listening, we are maintaining strict neutrality here. We are not here to debate the sociological impact or, the morals of violent video games. We are simply examining the Supreme Court's logical machinery exactly as it operates in reality.
Okay, so let's look at the gears the court put into place. The very first premise they establish is that video games communicate ideas through familiar literary devices and features distinctive to the medium.
So they're explicitly comparing them to books, plays, and movies.
Yes, which are already protected. A subsequent premise states that the basic principles of freedom of speech do not vary simply because a new and different communication medium is invented.
Okay, I see what they're doing. They are laying down these factual statements. They are saying, here is gear 1. Games use literary devices. Here is gear 2. The medium doesn't change the rules,
Right.
but those gears aren't doing any work yet. They're just sitting there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they add another premise. They state that the government fundamentally lacks the power to restrict expression simply because of its message or content, noting there are only a very few extremely limited historical exceptions, like strict obscenity. And they firmly state that a legislature cannot just invent new categories of unprotected speech by trying to weigh the artistic value against supposed social costs.
So all of those premises are turning together.
Yes.
And all of that rotational force is designed to turn one final massive gear. the conclusion.
Which is,
Therefore, video games qualify for First Amendment protection.
what's fascinating here is the unseen friction that actually makes those gears turn. In logic, we call it the inference.
Inference.
An inference is the actual reasoning process. It is the mental leap required to draw a conclusion from those specific premises. You can have a list of true statements, but without a valid inference, they don't connect.
They're just random facts without it.
Right. The inference is the bridging mechanism from speech principles don't change with new mediums to the inescapable result that games are protected speech.
Ooh.
The argument is the physical gears. The inference is the actual kinetic energy transferring between them.
Okay, that makes so much sense. But this brings us to a massive problem. If a Supreme Court decision is a perfectly engineered grandfather clock, a lot of what we read online today is just a box of loose springs and shattered glass pretending to tell time.
That is a very accurate description of the internet.
Right. We're constantly exposed to things that sound passionate, they look like arguments, but they are completely hollow. How do you and I spot these fakes?
It requires active vigilance because humans are exceptionally gifted at disguising non-arguments as profound logical discourse.
We want to believe them.
We do. We naturally want to find meaning where there isn't any. In logic, we categorize these fakes as non-inferential passages, and the single most common variety you will encounter online is a simple statement of opinion or belief.
Oh, this happens constantly. Imagine you are scrolling and you see someone post something like, "I wish the government would do something about the unemployment situation. It makes me incredibly angry to see these corporate CEOs getting massive multi-million-dollar bonuses while at the exact same time their corporations are laying off thousands of frontline workers."
Now, let's analyze that passage logically. It is dripping with intense emotion. It represents a strongly held belief.
Obviously.
But from a structural standpoint, it is completely inert. There is no kinetic energy. The speaker isn't offering any evidence to support a broader conclusion, nor are they positioning any of those sentences as a conclusion derived from facts.
It's just a feeling.
Exactly. They are expressing a state of mind. Logically, it is a non-argument.
It's just someone yelling into the void hoping you'll yell back. But what about something objective, like the news? You would assume the daily news is just wall-to-wall arguments.
Actually, true journalistic reports are meticulously designed to be non-arguments.
Wait, really?
Yes. Consider this real-world example from the text. An Associated Press report detailed an incident where 2,000 red-winged blackbirds mysteriously fell dead from the sky in a central Arkansas town.
That is wild.
The report stated that the birds fell over a concentrated 1-mile area, that an aerial survey found 0 dead birds outside of that specific zone, and that state wildlife officials were collecting carcasses for testing.
Which is an incredible, highly unsettling story. It gives you the who, the what, the where, and the when in vivid detail.
But notice what the journalist intentionally left out. The why. There is 0 inference. The reporter is not putting forward a conclusion about alien testing or environmental toxins, and none of the statements are offered as premises to support a claim. A true report transfers data, not reasoning.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's look at advice. You hear quotes all the time, like Robert Frost saying, "In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life." It goes on.
A classic.
That sounds like the ultimate conclusion to a lifetime of experience.
It is a profound observation, without question. It might bring you immense comfort or change your perspective. But logically, he presents 0 evidence to support the claim.
Right, there are no premises.
There are no premises acting as gears to turn that thought. There is no inferential claim being made. Therefore, it is not an argument.
All right, I need to push back on this because there's a subtle distinction here that is bothering me. We've talked about opinions and reports, but earlier I mentioned a warning sign on a beach.
Right.
Something that says, "Dangerous currents, no lifeguard on duty." Now, if I am standing on the sand reading that, couldn't I easily argue that there is an implicit conclusion, like the current is deadly, there is no one to save you, therefore you should absolutely not go in the water? Isn't the sign arguing with me?
That is exactly how your brain is wired to process it. Because as a species, we survive by seeking meaning and consequence.
Yeah, I want to not drown.
But from a strict, rigid, logical standpoint, you are the one building the argument, not the sign. The sign is not an argument. Think about the kinetic energy we discussed. That warning sign alters your behavior. It keeps you dry on the beach. But it offers 0 actual evidence or reasoning to prove that the current is dangerous.
Oh, I see.
It doesn't cite historical drowning statistics or measure undertow velocities. It is simply a non-inferential statement of fact designed to caution you. it dictates an action without utilizing an inferential process to prove a truth.
Wow. Okay, that is a razor-thin but completely vital distinction. A warning dictates an action. An argument attempts to prove a truth.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You are spotting the difference between influence and logic.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because if inference is this deliberate mechanical mental process, why do we fall for fake arguments so easily in the real world?
Well, because out in the wild, people rarely stop and announce their structure.
Right. Nobody says, "Excuse me, here's my premise, embrace yourself for my conclusion." They don't label their gears.
They definitely do not.
So what is the detective's toolkit? How do we uncover the underlying machinery when it's hiding in plain sight?
The most powerful tools at your disposal are what logicians call indicators. Because we all share a common language, we have evolved built-in signals that we naturally deploy when we are attempting to reason with someone.
Like cheat codes.
Think of them as the cheat codes of human communication, yeah.
Like conclusion indicators. If you were reading an article and you see words like therefore, consequently, thus, so, hence, or phrases like, it follows that a flashing red light should go off in your brain, the author is signaling that the final gear is about to turn.
And we have the exact same system for premises. Words like because, since, given that, or assuming that. These words are explicit signals that the speaker is about to offer you the supporting evidence.
They're telling you, here's why you should believe what I'm about to say.
Exactly.
But those are the easy ones. What happens when the author doesn't use any of those words?
That's where it gets tricky.
You read a paragraph, there is no therefore, there is no because, but you can feel the friction. You can sense they are trying to convince you of something. We call this an implicit inferential claim.
Yes, and this is where you stop being a passive reader and start actively testing the text. You can perform what's known as the therefore because test.
Okay, how does that work?
You mentally insert those indicator words into the passage yourself to see if the gear is locked together.
Oh, I see.
If you have a paragraph and you aren't sure which sentence is the conclusion, try placing the word therefore in front of each sentence, one by one. Whichever sentence makes the most logical sense as the culmination of all the others, that is almost certainly your conclusion.
And you do the exact same thing with because to hunt down the premises.
Precisely.
It's like putting on X-ray glasses to see the structural skeleton of a paragraph. Let's really stress test this with a masterclass example of uncovering implicit logic.
Let's do it.
Let's look at Joseph Heller's brilliant, incredibly frustrating novel Catch-22, because it is arguably the finest example of a seemingly absurd, chaotic situation concealing an ironclad, inescapable logical structure.
It is the perfect puzzle to dissect. Let's lay out the premises, the gears, exactly as Heller designs them for the bombardier, Yossarian, and his fellow pilot, or Premise 1.
Yeah.
A concern for one's own safety in the face of real and immediate life-threatening danger is the process of a rational mind.
Okay, gear 1. That makes perfect sense. If people are shooting at you, wanting to live is rational.
Premise 2. The character or is acting crazy, and military rules state that a crazy person can be grounded from flying combat missions.
Gear 2. Also makes sense.
Premise 3. The only requirement to trigger this rule is that all or has to do is formally ask to be grounded.
Okay, so the solution is obvious. If he just asks the doctor, he gets grounded and he gets to live. But here is where Heller springs the inferential trap on the reader.
Exactly. Walk through the inference with me.
Mm-hmm.
If or actually goes to the doctor and asks to be grounded, what is he demonstrating?
Well, he is demonstrating a clear concern for his own safety.
Right. And according to our very first premise, a concern for your own safety proves you have a rational mind.
Oh, no.
And if he has a rational mind, he is by definition sane. And what happens to sane pilots?
They have to fly more combat missions.
Yeah.
It's devastating. Heller created a perpetual motion machine of logic.
You really did.
He would be crazy to fly more missions, and sane if he didn't. But if he is sane, he has to fly them. If he flies them, he's crazy and doesn't have to. But if he refuses to fly them, he is sane and has to. It is an inescapable loop.
It is a flawlessly constructed logical mechanism. And notice, Heller doesn't use a single standard indicator word to explain this to the reader.
No, therefores.
He doesn't hold your hand with therefores and becauses. But the kinetic energy of that inferential claim is undeniably clear. The premises trap the conclusion in a perfect cycle. It's no wonder Yossarian was deeply moved by the absolute simplicity of it. He is defeated by pure logic.
You can't argue with it because the structure is sound.
Right.
So what does this all actually mean for you, the person listening to this right now? Why did we just spend this entire deep dive dissecting truth values, Supreme Court rulings, and World War II literature?
It's a fair question.
It is, because by learning how to spot a premise, how to test for a conclusion, and how to identify a non-argument, you have just upgraded your mental filter for the information age.
You really have.
You are no longer just a passive consumer reacting to the loudest voice. When you watch a cable news segment or read a politician's post or sit through a pitch at work, you can pause, look at the ears, and ask yourself, are they actually building a functioning logical machine here, or are they just making a lot of noise?
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, mastering this isn't just about winning arguments on social media or avoiding bad sales pitches. The exact same logical framework we just discussed governs the absolute pinnacle of human discovery.
I love this example from the text.
To end this journey, let's look at one final, awe-inspiring example from the realm of theoretical astrobiology.
The shadow biosphere.
Precisely. Scientists recently discovered a specific strain of bacterium that appears to survive by metabolizing toxic arsenic instead of phosphorus.
Now, why does that matter?
Because historically, the foundational premise of all terrestrial biology has been that every single form of life on Earth requires phosphorus to survive.
It is the main gear of the biological clock. Everything turns on that fact.
But this microscopic discovery shatters that premise. And while the scientific community didn't instantly leap to the conclusion that a completely separate, independent origin of life, a shadow biosphere, exists all around us, they rely on the exact same logical structure we've been discussing to safely navigate into that unknown.
So what does that look like?
Well, premise. All known life uses phosphorus. Premise. This newly discovered bacterium fundamentally uses arsenic. Conclusion. Therefore, the mathematical possibility exists that life evolved from a completely different, unrecorded common ancestor.
Wow.
At the absolute highest levels of scientific inquiry, researchers are using these basic logical structures to literally rewrite the definition of what life on Earth can be.
It is all connected by the same invisible threads. From a beach warning sign to a bureaucratic nightmare in a novel to the origins of life itself, logic is the core operating system of human understanding.
It truly is.
Which leaves me with one final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We've established that our shared language, and specifically those vital indicator words like therefore and because, are the tools that allow us to recognize arguments.
Right, the cheat codes.
They are how we share reasoning and uncover truth together. But what happens to our collective ability to reason if the way we communicate online continues to relentlessly lose its structure?
Yeah, that's a chilling thought.
If our daily communication devolves entirely into contextless memes, disjointed fragments, and purely emotional reactions, are we slowly losing the very tools required to formulate a complete thought?
The gears start to rust.
Exactly. If we forget how to build the gears, what happens when the machine stops turning? Something to think about.